Back in April, I did my first Vipassana meditation course. I'm going to guess that a decent number of people here have heard of Vipassana, but I'm curious, has anyone done a course? One at least. Great. Well, for those of you who know and for those who don't know, your first course in Vipassana is a 10-day retreat in almost complete silence with very little distraction. And so that means no phones, no tablets, no laptops, but it also means no books, no writing, not even taking notes. And when I say complete silence, I mean no talking, but I also mean that you're not even supposed to make eye contact with the other meditators. So for 10 days, it's really just you alone with yourself, trying to meditate for 10 hours a day. And it's tough. Try just for 10 minutes, focusing only on your bodily sensation, and see how your mind runs. Now imagine 10 hours, 10 days. I never expected to do a silent meditation course. I'm too practical. Friends look to me to manage their retirement funds, or plan their budget vacation, or perform minor surgery on their sick child. All my life, I've been focused on being responsible and the best. I was top of my high school class. I had a 4.1 GPA at an Ivy League university. I scored in the 98th percentile in the exam Americans take to go to medical school. And for a time, it seemed to be paying off. I had a fancy degree, a new job with potential, even a boy. I felt like all the checkboxes of life success were quickly being marked off, as if my life were finally reaching a point of symmetry. And then, boy and I broke up after 3 years, and I didn't take it very well. He was my first boyfriend, and also my best friend, and it felt like a huge double loss. And soon after that, that job with potential that I'd moved abroad for turned out to be a disappointment for me, so that after a year and a half of sticking with it, I just decided to leave without another job or really any sort of life plan. And as I sat in my room in Bombay, I felt lost and defeated. I didn't know how to move forward. But I knew I should be doing something, and my inability to do anything made me panic nonstop. I'd wake up in the morning and my breath would be too fast, my heart would be too fast, and I'd have this constant list running through my mind of every mistake that I had made. And this list followed me through the day, into my sleep, and I felt completely incapable of controlling it. I don't think I'm alone in this. If you look it up, a study from Harvard in 2010 found that the average human brain spends 47% of waking time thinking about either the past or the future. I might be above average on this, but we're all doing it. During this time of panic, in the last month of my job, I happened to get lunch with one of my colleagues, Kritika, who I'd heard had done a meditation retreat. Kritika is the type of person who works nonstop and is currently in business school, so certainly not your stereotypical meditator. But she had such amazing things to say about her experience. So she gave me the name of a center, and I just went ahead to the website, signed up, and went 1 month later. It just so happened that her retreat had been Vipassana. If it had been some other form of meditation, I would have done that. And even though I had talked with her, I didn't really understand what Vipassana was, and I didn't look into it before going. I knew either it would help or it wouldn't, but I had to try something. And so I went and meditated silently for 10 days, as strange and as unlike me as it sounded. I had an urge to run away the moment I arrived. I was crammed into this tiny cabin with 3 other women and slept on a mattress that was only slightly more comfortable than sitting for meditation. And the bathroom was infested with these monstrously big and hairy spiders, about the size of my hand. And everywhere around the campus, there were signs commanding us to be happy with smiley face exclamation marks. And I hated these signs because, yes, I wanted to be happy, but I hated how they made me feel like it was just some simple on-off switch that I could control just like that. When for me, being happy felt like anything but simple. And in addition to this, the schedule was tiring. I certainly wasn't jumping out of bed at 4 a.m. when the gigantic gong rang, or skipping to the 8 daily 1 to 2 hour sessions, or relishing the fact that my last meal was at 5 p.m. And actually, it wasn't even a meal, it was a snack. But as uncomfortable as these things were, what really shook me was when I first left my taxi on arriving and saw my first fellow meditator. He was pale and pinch-faced and kind of dirty, and he was trying to grow dreads, but to me it just looked like he was in a constant state of electrocution. And all I could imagine in my mind was him sitting in a dark room, sticking his fingers in electrical sockets. And I just wanted to run away from him, go back to my taxi, and beg the driver to please take me to the nearest Starbucks so that I could be around pretty people again. However, I didn't run away because luckily I next saw a very sweet-faced, nicely dressed woman around my age, and I just sighed, thinking, thank God, another normal-looking person, just like me. Within a day, I was no longer Stephanie, but a set of numbers. F22 for my bed and seat in the cafeteria, C003 for my seat in the hall, 75 for my cell in the pagoda. I was stripped of my outer identity, but that didn't stop my inner thoughts that normal, hardworking, driven girls didn't do things like this. I'd think to myself, normal people don't sit around pretending to feel things. They actually do things. And then I'd think about how I actually spent my time doing things. Things like tapping on keyboards and flipping back and forth between Gmail and Facebook and staring off into space. Clearly not productive things. But I felt even less productive sitting in that hall because it was so boring and so tiring to be asked to sit for 2 hours, focusing only on the sensation of my breath, and then another hour, and then another 2 hours. And at this point, after 5 hours of meditation, it was only 11 a.m. in the morning. God. And then there was still the afternoon and the evening to get through. My back felt like burning rocks were trying to bore out. My neck felt like it would split in two. My arms and legs felt like the muscle was going to fall off. And my mind was like an addict, screaming at me to let it take away the physical pain by shooting up with memories and fantasies. Because when my mind got to wander, an hour of agony passed like that. Wandering was the easy way out. And I despised the people around me like Electric Socket Man, who seemed so serene and most importantly, upright in their meditation. The two blanket boys who always arrived in the hall on time with their heads and their bodies perfectly covered. The vampire girl with the biker boots who even walked perfectly straight, throwing her shoulders back and flexing her neck each time before she sat down to meditate as if she were some champion fighter. And then there was me, huddling in as close to a fetal position as I could get, while still trying to maintain a semblance of semi-straightness. And so for the first 3 days, I mostly tried to avoid meditation. I started skipping the 4:30 a.m. session and left the hall early for every other one. When I was in the hall, I did everything but focus on my breath. I made 20-something item-long lists of all the goals I would pursue once I was finally out of that prison and back to my real life. I actually liked the no talking. I liked that no phone call or chat or SMS could disrupt my day. I liked that break. But I hated the meditation itself. I thought it was so stupid to be asked to sit for 10 hours a day. Maybe 2 to 3 hours, yes, I could really muster up the mental effort to put some concentration towards that. But 10 hours was an inhumanely, unreasonably exhausting amount of time. Time that I knew I could put to better use. The only thing that motivated me to give a bit of effort was S.N. Goenka. Some of you here probably know of him or have heard of him, but basically he can be called the founder of the modern practice of Vipassana. And every night during the course, we watched one of his videos. I typically didn't want to listen. By 7 p.m., I was always completely annoyed with my back pain and wanted support significantly more than listening to someone who looked like an Indian Santa Claus without a beard give this long, meandering lecture filled with lots of fables. I mostly tried to tune him out. But sometimes, in spite of myself, His words, even the simplest things, came through. On the first night he said, "One has to live in the present. How can you live in the past? The past is gone forever. You cannot buy back the moment that has gone away. You cannot buy back the past and relive it, given all of the dollars in the world. And future is future. You cannot predict it. You have to live in the present. You cannot buy back the past and relive it, given all of the dollars in the world." I kept repeating this to myself because, duh, it was true. But I basically lived my whole life completely opposite. I had a very romantic sense of the past, that the past was what made me, and therefore it should be revered, and almost like an idol, continually worshipped in my mind with as much detail as possible. And I thought of letting go as losing myself. Who would I be without my past? Who would I be if I hadn't been a lonely misfit growing up? Who would I be if I hadn't buried my social anxiety in studying? Who would I be if I hadn't found someone to make me feel normal? Who would I be if I hadn't felt abandoned by that same person? We all carry our own packages of grief. I felt broken by mine, and honestly, I liked feeling broken. How comforting it was to be able to say that all that was wrong was because this and this had happened to me. To just reach back to the past, to this person, or to this event that had made me a victim. It felt impossible to give that comfort up. Over the next few days, I still left the hall early. I still mostly tried to ignore Goenka, and sometimes I actively rebelled. On the third or fourth day, we were assigned our individual cells in the pagoda. And a cell is exactly what it sounds like. A little room with a door over here and a window up here and a cushion on the floor for you to sit on and meditate alone. But when I entered my cell for the first time, the first thing I did was a big no-no, and I knew it. It was even written on the list of don'ts. I laid down on wait for it, the floor. And I felt so euphoric in this act, staring up at the ceiling, looking for shapes. I found Zeus. I was having so much fun. But sometimes I really did try. Day 4 was the first day that I stayed in the hall for an entire 2-hour session. On that day, the focus was on sensation throughout the entire body. The previous days, the focus on breathing, the focus on sensation only on your upper lip. That had been preparation for the real thing, Vipassana. Now, I have a favor to ask of everyone. Michael and I thought it would be great if we could all experience Vipassana together. Just for 10 seconds, though. So if you'll please play along, please close your eyes, sit with your back completely straight, hands on your knees, be still, clear your mind, and focus on bodily sensation. So that means that you can move your awareness from the top of your head down to your toes, or it also means that you can just focus on any sensation that comes to you. So yes, if we'll all be in position, and we'll begin now with the words of Goenka. Observe objectively whatever reality manifests itself, any sensation that you experience. It might be tickling, tingling, itching, burning. It might be scratching, warming, prickling, paining. Whatever the sensation, observe it with perfect equanimity, remembering every sensation arises and passes, arises and passes. Okay, thank you everyone for doing that with me. Now, I don't know about you, but when I tried to do this for 2 hours, mostly what I experienced was the early stages of a massive headache. But I tried, and for the entire 2-hour session, I let my mind follow Goenka's voice through each body part, from the top of the head down to the toes. I felt the electrical light tingling across my face. I felt my hair blowing against my neck. I felt the painful burning between my shoulders, and I felt the soft pinpricks in my foot as it fell asleep. And when that session ended, for the very first time, I left the hall feeling optimistic, thinking that maybe I actually was capable of practicing Vipassana. On day 5, we were asked not to move our legs or arms during the 1-hour sittings. And just saying that right now, it doesn't sound horrible, but actually, let me tell you, trying to sit for 1 hour without moving is incredibly painful, both physically and psychologically. On my first attempt, I gave up after 45 minutes, thinking, this is stupid. It doesn't make any sense to make myself experience this amount of pain. I don't care that this is supposed to make me happy. I don't care that 70% of the people in this room seem happy doing it. Me, I'm 10,000 miles from happy right now. But a few hours later, on that same 5th day, there was another sitting, and I told myself, you signed up for this because your life wasn't working. For school, work, love. You said you were the hardest working person in the world. You said you would do anything. I thought sitting around like this was for the weak anyways, so how are you, of all people, giving up so easily? And so I sat again, letting my legs go numb from the thighs downward, even though I hated the feeling of those lifeless blood sacs. I let my hands grip my knees and shake hysterically. I let myself deceive myself again and again, saying, just one more time. One more body scan up and down, and then, if you absolutely cannot do it, you can give up. And just as my mind responded, really, this time is it, I can't do it anymore, Goenka's sweet, sweet, sweet voice came on, signaling the end. And I was so happy. 1, just have completed this incredibly painful thing, but 2, I felt like I was starting to see the value in practicing Vipassana, especially its focus on impermanence, that not only does every bodily sensation arise and pass, but so does every emotion. On the morning of day 8, I couldn't stop myself from crying, which was embarrassing in a space where I had no space. I was thinking about him. I was always thinking about him. Throughout the whole experience, 95% of the memories and fantasies, him. Memories that I didn't even know I had were popping out. Some feminist I was. School, work, friends. I barely gave them a second thought. But a boy, he had my full attention. Why him? Because on the first night that he came over, he poked his finger into my stomach, saying, "You have a soft, gooey marshmallow center." What a song to my serious, studious self. That's all that I had actually wanted, more than all the A's and acceptance letters in the world, to be seen for who I actually was, someone who is sweet, sensitive, hopeful. And I thought he was the only person who could do that. So what an incredible loss once he was gone. Still crying, I eventually fell asleep. And when I woke up, my face looked like a wreck, but I felt unexpectedly light in a way that I hadn't felt for months, maybe years. Barely feeling the sad thoughts about him, mostly actually just thinking about how eager I was to meditate again. And what I started to realize then was that my package of grief might be with me for life. I would probably always regret the way that relationship ended, the words said and unsaid on both sides. But the overwhelming sadness I felt around that regret could be temporary, and I could actively focus on making it pass. And in that way, rather than being led by this package from the past, I could start leading my own life. On day 9, I had one meditation session where I flowed. It was like effortlessly running a warm bucket of water up and down my body, my skin pleasantly vibrating at each touch. I felt like I could sit for hours like that, smoothly, easily, contentedly pulsating. My heart was beating, my lungs were breathing. I was alive in that moment, not some moment in the past, not some moment in the future, and it felt amazing. The meditation course ended 87 days ago. Yes, I've counted. For almost every day since then, I've meditated for 1 hour. Now, I'm not trying to walk the Noble Eightfold Path to becoming a Buddha. Frankly, the thought of being that pure scares me. Mostly, I'm just trying to calm the daily paralyzing anxieties and to see if for at least 1 hour a day I can be completely in the present. What I've come to understand is that the past is part of me, and I don't want to forget it, and I don't want to hate it, but I don't need to be defined by it in this moment. And what I like when I meditate is that sometimes I can hear myself in the present saying, "This is who you are. This is what you want right now. You are okay." Thank you.